Good evening, everybody. It's Friday night, March 18th, which means we got 2 weeks till kickoff, and I'm excited to bring you the American Conference Review. This is a week after doing the National Conference Review, which you can see below if you're interested. If you haven't checked it out, go check that one out. Come back, and you'll get the whole scope of the league with both conferences. But without further ado, let's bring on the American Conference Review. So today I'm going to talk about the Jacksonville Sharks, the Orlando Predators, the Philadelphia Soul, and the Tampa Bay Storm. But to start things off, got to start with the American Conference defending champions, the Jacksonville Sharks. Head coached by Les Moss. Last year, like I said, they were American Conference champions, but then lost to San Jose in the Arena Bowl 28 after finishing 10-8 in the regular season. 2016 would be Jacksonville's sixth season in the league, which has seen them finish with a winning record every season except for 2014. Like I mentioned, Jacksonville's coming off of a 68-47 loss at San Jose in Arena Bowl 28. The word to describe the offense coming in 2016 is consistency. Returning stars are quarterback Tommy Grady, wide receivers Tiger Jones and Joe Hills, and of course, fullback Derek Ross. This quadruple is sure to take what they were able to do last year and ramp it up a notch. Last year, Grady and company finished 5th in the league in points per game at 53.9, while trailing the Soul by only 6 yards for the top mark in total offense. Those stats don't look amazing until you realize that all four of those players were on different teams in 2014. When Grady is in Pittsburgh, Tiger and Ross were in Philly, and Joe Hills was in Tampa Bay. Derek Ross is in a league of his own at fullback, while Grady is considered to be a top 3 quarterback in the Arena Football League, especially if Meyer doesn't play this year. If Jacksonville wants to return to the Arena Bowl in 2016, they're going to need those guys to set the pace. On defense, the big news here in March for the Sharks is Joe Sykes. Will he play in 2016? On March 10th, Sykes was put on the refuse to report list. Sykes joins the likes of the 4 guys on offense that came from different teams in 2014 to create what was known last year as the Dream Team roster. And if he doesn't play this year, then Jacksonville loses 18.5 sacks and 8 forced fumbles. Those numbers were good enough to earn Sykes the Riddell Defensive Player of the Year and the Vid Swap Defensive Lineman of the Year in 2015. Not much more is needed to express how big of a loss that would be if he doesn't play. The good news for this defense is they bring in Arena Bowl 28 playmaker of the game, defensive back David Highland, to join the likes of Demarcus Robbins, Chris Pickett, and Larache Jackson. Alvin Ray Jackson returns to the club as well, but there's no way around it. This defense in 2015 went through Joe Sykes. It's imperative for Jacksonville to make sure he suits up week 1 when the Sharks travel to LA to face the Kiss. Bottom line for Jacksonville this season is that their success in 2016 will hinge on the Big Four on offense continuing to gel and getting used to each other. If there was a team in the AFL to compete with Arizona on offensive talent, it is definitely Jacksonville. The Sharks finished the season with 4 of 6 games at home. If they want to secure one of the top 2 seeds, they're going to do it lighting up the scoreboard and forcing other teams into even more of a passing game than the AFL is already used to. Next up, the Orlando Predators, head coached by Rob Keefe. Last year they went 12-6 and lost in the first round to Jacksonville. Orlando enters their 25th season in 2016, coming off a tough loss to in-state rival Jacksonville. On offense, Orlando will look a lot like the team they saw last year. At quarterback, Orlando welcomes back Bernard Morris and Randy Hibbert. When you think of scoring in the AFL, Orlando isn't usually one of the teams that come to mind. But in 2015, Orlando finished 3rd in the AFL at 56.8 points per game and 3rd in total offense. A lot of teams in the league go through multiple quarterbacks during a season, but usually it's because of lack of talent, players moving to the CFL, or things like that. But in Orlando, they routinely rotate Hibbert, who is a classic drop-back passer, and Bernard Morris, who is more of the Cam Newton type quarterback inside the 5-yard line. Keefe isn't going to want to mess with what worked in 2015, so I would expect to see more of that in 2016. As far as the rest of the offense, not often do you see an arena team have 3 players in the top 10 in rushing without a single receiver in the top 10 in receiving yards. Bernard Morris finished 4th in the league, while Michael Simons and Brandon Tompkins came in 8th and 9th respectively. Greg Carr, Brandon Tompkins, and Larry Brackens look to try and fix the passing game so Orlando can get back to more quick scores and start faster than they did last season. It will be interesting to see if Orlando can keep up with their scoring if their pass game is as lackluster as it was in 2015. Look for the Preds to keep the ball on the ground more than any other team in the league. Now, if a running game is going to be Orlando's game plan going into the season, then they're going to need to lean on their defense to help in the scoring game. Orlando welcomes Willie McGinnis in from Cleveland. Now, before I go on, I have to mention that I messed this one up last week. I missed that McGinnis had signed to Orlando back in December. All of the things I said last week about Willie in Cleveland applies this week with Orlando. This is a lot of stats and leadership brought over from Cleveland to pair with linebacker Terrence Moore and Austin Brown. The big loss for this team is defensive back Nick Taylor, who was put on the other league exempt list back on March 4th after signing with the Saskatchewan Roughriders of the CFL. Second-year defensive lineman Austin Brown is also back after recording 5.5 sacks in 2015. The key this offseason was arrival of defensive back Kent Richardson, who brings 6 interceptions and 2 touchdowns over from the Soul as he looks to help Predator fans forget about Nick Taylor. Orlando is one of those teams where you don't really understand how they win games. They don't have a lot of talent, but they work hard as a team, and that's a credit to how Rob Keefe coaches. But that will be the motto for this year's season. Team over self is the kind of thing you have to think about with this team this year. Look for Orlando to be players at the end of the season fighting for one of the top 2 seeds. Moving on, we got the Philadelphia Soul. Head coach Clinton Dolezel. Last season they went 15-3 with a loss to Jacksonville in the American Conference Championship. Maybe it's just me, but when I think of Philadelphia, I think of Ron Jaworski, the majority owner of the team. Him being at the forefront of the league has helped get the Soul some credibility and staying power. Since 2012, Philly has gone 51-21, not counting the playoffs. They come into 2016 having lost in the American Conference Championship to Jacksonville, and just like the other 2 American Conference teams I mentioned before, expect some more of the same from the city of brotherly love on offense. Quarterback Dan Rodabaugh, Sean S.K. Kellen, I'm just going to say S.K., and Ryan McDaniel. The big news on offense is the apparent loss of Marco Thomas. I can't seem to find anything on him, and he's not listed on the Soul's official website. That is 1,772 yards and 40 touchdowns unaccounted for from 2015. But like I mentioned before, there's plenty of returning firepower to help Philly get back to competing for the Arena Bowl in 2016. Rodabaugh finished last season second in passing and first in touchdowns with 119, which is well above everyone else in the league. I think second place was 103. McDaniel returns after finishing 10th in the league in receiving yards while tying for 9th with 29 touchdowns. With the signing of Preche Rodriguez and the other established wide receivers, I see Philly challenging for points scored in 2016. On defense, Philly is bolstered by the return of some big pieces that helped them only lose 4 games in 2015. Defensive lineman Bo Bell returns after finishing second on the team with 5 sacks a year ago. But the return of Larico Stevenson and James Romaine headlined the defense. Between the 2 of those guys, they intercepted 14 interceptions while Romaine returned 1 for a touchdown. Romaine and Stevenson were joined by Joe Gooseby as the top 3 tackles on the team last season. This amount of consistency on defense will prove to be the key for a team who will be putting up a lot of points this year. Philly finished last season around the middle of the pack in most defensive categories, but that is due to the offense going on more sustained drives than the rest of the league. The Soul were first place in time of possession last season, which meant more rests for the defense and more stops. It's hard to imagine this changing at all with the pieces they were able to retain. Bottom line with Philly though, expect to see them in the mix like they have been every year since 2012. With reigning Offensive Player of the Year and League MVP quarterback Dan Rodabaugh, along with Head Coach of the Year in Clinton Dolezel, look for Philly to be near the top in hype going into the season. With that much talent at the most important positions, anything less than a number 3 seed should be looked at as a disappointment. Last but not least, in the American Conference for 2016, we got the Tampa Bay Storm. Head coach Lawrence Samuels. Last year they finished 7-11 and failed to make the playoffs. Tampa Bay is one of the pillars of the AFL along with Arizona and Orlando. This will be Tampa Bay's 25th season as they look to right the ship and aim for a winning record for the first time since 2010. You want to talk about consistency? Tampa Bay went 7-11 in 2011, 8-10 in 2012, and continued that pattern all the way up to this year, which meant they went 7-11 in 13, 8-10 in 14, and back to 7-11 last season, 2015. Last year saw Tampa Bay's worst home and road losses in team history. Enough about the past though, let's talk about this season. And you can't have a conversation about Tampa Bay's offense without talking about TT Tolliver. Tolliver is the elder statesman in the AFL, going on his 14th season in the league. TT is the star of that offense, especially with the unknown status of quarterback Jason Boltus. TT returns after snagging 112 catches for 1,536 yards and 35 touchdowns. As far as Boltus goes, he is on the team's refused to report list, which is bad news for the team. Jason had a career year in 2015, throwing for 98 touchdowns and over 5,000 yards, which put him at number 1 in the league. If Boltus doesn't return, Tampa Bay will more than likely turn to quarterback Adam Kennedy, who played last season with New Orleans, throwing for less than half of what Boltus did in pretty much every category. Joining TT Tolliver on the outside are wide receivers Gerald Young, Julius Gregory, and Emery Salmons, among others. Notice no mention of Kendrick Ings. That's because the Storm's most electric player in 2015 signed a contract with the CFL and is on the team's exempt list. That's a big loss for Tampa, as Ings was responsible for over 2,000 all-purpose yards and 18 touchdowns. The Storm better figure out their quarterback situation, and fast, as the rest of the American Conference are all returning last year's starting quarterbacks and looking to be all legitimate contenders. On defense, the Storm see the same uncertain future, as their top-performing tackler from 2015, Al Phillips, doesn't seem to be returning this year. He is not listed on his roster as of today, which means Tampa is losing 107 tackles and 3 interceptions. The good news is, Rick J. Hill returns. Hill was the Storm's second-best tackler with 67.5 tackles last season. James Harrell, the team's best defensive back last season, is also returning after snagging 7 interceptions last season and 1 forced fumble. As far as the defensive line goes, Tampa welcomes back Everett Dawkins, who finished 2015 with 3 sacks. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it, everybody. Tampa's defense scares me, and not in the way that San Jose did last season. Tampa's going to give up some points, and in this context, some means a lot. Bottom line for Tampa, though, is they are the bottom feeders from last season returning in the American Conference. For a team that could possibly lose their quarterback and their top defender, that is bad news. For such a proud AFL franchise, it's sad that they come to the table with this kind of talent deficiency. They find a diamond in the rough with Ings last year, and he bolts for the CFL. No pun intended there with Jason Boltus. I would love to see Tampa Bay shock the world, but it's going to be tough. But if there's a guy to do it, I think AFL Hall of Famer Lawrence Law Dog Samuels is the one to get it done. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The American Conference Review. I hope you guys got something out of it like you did last week. I enjoyed the feedback of the mistake. Even though they were the mistakes I made, I enjoyed the feedback. I hope it gets you pumped up for the season starting in a couple weeks. I hope you come back next week for the prediction video. I plan to predict all 8 seeds and then the playoffs as well. So if you want a little bit of perspective from an outsider of the AFL, not a Arena Fan employee or ArenaFootball.com employee or media, just check in next week and I'll have that up around this time. It's either going to be Friday night or Saturday morning, but I hope you check that out. I also want to remind you guys to check out the blog. I post the daily transactions list. I posted last night's, I think earlier today, so check that out if you want to keep up on the transaction list. I mentioned that video about a newsletter. I want to do a newsletter. That'll be the easiest way to get all the information out to you, and that way I'm coming to you guys and you're not coming to me. But I didn't get any responses from Wednesday. But if you're interested, please drop me a line. Please write a comment below. If you're interested in that, I would love to start up a newsletter and we can go from there. I hope you guys all have a good weekend, good rest of the week. Enjoy some warmer weather, some March Madness. Just get that basketball out of your system. I know that the March Madness will still be going on the 1st when the Arena Football starts, but get that basketball crap out of your system. Get ready for some football. And remember what Gene Simmons said this week. Arena Football. It's the most fun you'll have with your pants on. Alright guys, take care, and I will see you on Wednesday.